Welcome to the LA Business Podcast, your destination to hear stories of how businesses grow and scale. I'm Robert Brill, CEO of Brill Media and the host of this podcast. Now, let's jump right into this week's interview. Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of the LA Business Podcast. Today our guest is Alan Brooks, Chief Creative Officer of Building Momentum, an organization teaching problem solving through science, engineering, and technology development. Alan, thanks for being on the show. Can you tell us a little bit about how Building Momentum came to be and how you got into this business?
Yeah, thanks for having me. So Building Momentum was founded about 3 or 4 years ago. So it's 2016, 2015, by Brad Halsey and Brad Halsey. I gotta get my words out of my mouth better. Brad Halsey and Albert Vega, who are the co-founders, CEO and CTO, respectively. At the time, we were founded as an organization based around the idea of doing creative problem solving to active duty service members in the Marine Corps. And we would go all over the country out of the back of a converted NASCAR trailer, teaching 3D printing and laser cutting and welding and robotics and electronics and all of these cool pieces of tech. And the idea was, let's teach people how to utilize tools of the future to solve today's problems in a really rapid, iterative way. And so that work happened for a couple of years. I joined about a year after they founded the company, and my task was basically to build the opportunities for that kind of instruction and work outside the DoD and outside the military work that we had been doing, and become integrative across all of our kind of columns of possible work. And so we've been doing that for now, like I said, about 4 years. And we do now our students include not just the DoD, not just Marines, but students at the K-12 grade bands, underemployed or unemployed community members, corporate teams will come in for team building around the same ideals. But again, at the end of the day, it's all about teaching people how to be creative problem solvers, no matter what the tool is that they're using.
Can you give us an example of what this creative problem solving would look like?
Sure. So all of our the kind of core of our training started with something called Innovation Boot Camp, where we took 5 days with a crew of Marines, and in those 5 days, we would solve a real problem that they were facing on base. So we would take, we've helped people figure out how to get surveillance systems installed on weapons caches that are a kilometer away. We've figured out how to create drones basically from scrap parts in the middle of the desert. And we center these problems around, what is your biggest problem? And then we understand the problem set and problem identification, and then we utilize whatever tools are appropriate to solve that problem. But the students are the ones who actually do the work and do the learning to figure out how to solve it, and then they execute the actual solution by the end of the week.
So does the term, do you talk about MacGyver a lot? I mean, it sounds like you're teaching the MacGyver school of problem solving.
Yeah, I mean, we've glanced off the term before quite a bit, and we don't hate it because I loved some MacGyver in the '80s. But I mean, basically, that the thing that made him so appealing as a character is that he had this robust skill set that allowed for him to solve for any problem, right? No matter what the thing was that he found him, whatever scenario he found himself in, he was able to look inside himself, recognize the ability to turn a gum wrapper, a shoelace, and an empty bowl into a ham radio, right? And while it was like made exceptional for TV, it's basically the same idea. It's just giving people the confidence and permission to find themselves in a scenario, be able to first, and the most important thing is identify what the actual problem is, and then in a really, really rapid capacity, utilizing whatever's available to them, what they have on hand, to create a stage one solution for it, right? To get over that front line. And as that relates out to business and as it relates out to R&D work and all that stuff, so many times organizations will be like, we have this thing we have to deliver to a client, and it has to be perfect. It's got to be, Apple level polish. But
Yeah.
you're never going to get to Apple level polish unless you get a really crummy first prototype made from cardboard and duct tape on the table by noon today. So that's what we teach. Is we're like, look, forget everything about what's coming out 6 months from now. Let's just try and get something together in the next hour. See what we can do.
So
And it's been really exciting.
So Alan, while you started with the military, you're really looking at. I mean, there's application here for business, for iterative product development, for mindset. How do you work with businesses in the private sector?
So in a couple of different ways. So we have a full and really robust R&D department. So if you're a business that has an idea and you don't have the capacity internally to develop that idea, we can help with that. We can do a lot of stage one prototyping across industry. What's really cool is that our team's perspectives come from a whole lot of different places. We have people with a lot of people with theater backgrounds like myself. We have people with never finished university who are in pretty important roles here. We have people who are former photography instructors and PhD electrical engineers and mechanical engineers, right? So, and the challenge I would give anyone walking in the door is to figure out who's who, because what we care about are people who can listen to clients and say, oh, I get what you're asking for. You say that you want X, but have you ever considered that the pathway to X is through Y, Z, and Q, right? And we want people who can then say, not only can I design, build, and execute this prototype, I can work with you as a human being. So that's really important, and we do that work with organizations. We also will bring teams into our shop, or we'll go and travel to teams, and over the pandemic, we've been doing it virtually. But we'll actually do really high-level team building, utilizing tools and building and rapid iterative problem solving as a way to get at the heart of what things like design thinking and agile and scrum are trying to get at, and do so in a relatively abstracted way. When you've got big SWOT analysis on the board and those triangle charts, and you've killed about 13 pink and blue trees, we do that too, but then what we'll do is we'll take all those concepts after you've learned the basic ideas, and we'll throw you into our workshop, and we'll have you and your team weld a solution to a real problem. Maybe it's who can build something that can hold the most water, or who can who can build an antenna for this device, who can do this, who can solve this problem, what team can do that, utilizing the things you just learned in design thinking, and to the point of embodying that understanding, right? And embodying that learning. If you look around my office, there's a lot of video game stuff here. I really love video games. But when I talk about playing games with people, I don't say like, oh, Link in The Legend of Zelda climbed to the top of this mountain, and then he jumped off and paraglided into Hyrule Field, and then he fought a bunch of guardians. You use the I pronoun, right? I went to the top of the mountain. I fought the Lionel. I got the Master Sword. I did this. I did that, because there's an inherent connection from the experience and the body through the controller. And we do the same thing with things like design thinking, agile, and scrum, right? There's an inherent connection between the learning and the body. When we put you in our workshop and we put a welding torch in your hand and we ask you to MIG something together in 45 minutes. Those lessons get really immediately embodied, and then you hold on to those memories and that learning in a different way than you can in any other workshop.
So, Alan, is the purpose of that hands-on experience to really? I mean, is the learning there? Like, you've got to start with very little. You've got to see what works and what doesn't, and then you've got to like iterate on that further. Is that the purpose of doing that hand? Because I've never held a torch in my life. Or
it doesn't matter. Welding is what's great about welding as a learning tool is that if you've ever used a hot glue gun, you've used a welding torch. It's just a really super duper hot glue gun that maybe uses metal instead of hot glue. But that kind of hesitancy and that kind of oh, well, that looks a lot scarier uh, in person. That sparks, you're making plasma, you've made heat, all this stuff. Um, it can be intimidating. And so the other part that's really important about welding is that it's incredibly empowering because it looks really scary, but it's really easy to do. And
Mhm.
so if you get a team into our workshop and then they weld for the first time, they're like, "Oh my god, I overcame this thing that I thought was really scary. It really freaked me out when I walked in here that we were going to be welding as part of a corporate team building." Um, but then they walk away, and people are just pumped that they got the opportunity to learn a new skill, solve a real problem, work with their team again, and do it all through this lens of learning a really important skill, which is iterative, rapid problem solving, which across industries is incredibly valuable and important.
So rapid
Um,
problem solving, that's the key.
yeah,
That's the key to all this, rapid problem solving.
that's right.
Wow.
Yeah. So
And
I
not
went
being
to
afraid, and not being afraid of it.
right, and not being afraid of it, not being offended by it. Right. I went to theater school. Like I said, I am a failed actor. I am a tall, brown-haired white guy, and there are a lot of us who are in the same boat. Um, and But when I was in theater school and in my very short career as a professional actor, you are given such an incredible amount of that cadence of rapid problem solving. You get on stage, you're with your scene partner, you try something, you throw it away. You've got your director there. Stop, start over, say that again, try that a different way. What is your want? What is your need? What are you trying to get from this other person? What do you want from him? Say it differently. Say it this way. Try it this way. Try it that way. And you're constantly throwing out ideas, and some ideas make it pretty far, some ideas get killed in the room, but you're constantly just boom 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 boom, let's try something different, try something different, try something different, all in service of the final product, which is the performance, right? And so when you bring that mentality into industry, it can be really, that can create a lot of conflict, because when somebody gives you something and you're like, hey, design this mug, right? And they design the mug, and then you're like, this mug's great, but can you change the color to green, make the mouth hole just a little bit bigger because it glugs a little bit when I'm drinking from it. And if we can make the weight on the bottom a little bit so it doesn't turn over, a lot of times people will look at you and be like, but I made the mug, and
Right.
the task is complete. And are you saying that I am bad
Right.
because you didn't like my mug that I made for my work? Right. And it's really important for people to disassociate their personage from the work,
Yeah.
because I love my staff, like, love them. I would adopt them all and bring them into one gigantic house, and we would have the most fun, like, vacations ever. But um, sometimes we have to be really honest about the work, and we have to tell people, let's try that again. Let's throw away everything on the table. Let's trash all of these ideas and start over, and be comfortable with that, and understand that it isn't a judgment call on any one individual person because their idea got pushed aside, but rather we're all in service of the work. So let's try something new. Let's try something different. Let's try something again. It's why our company does rapid prototyping. It does uh, creative problem solving instruction. It runs a performing arts and events facility in Alexandria, and we opened a drive-in movie theater during the pandemic, right?
Wow.
Because we just aren't afraid of trying anything. And then when something works, we follow it. And if something doesn't work, we throw it away and we move on to something else.
The thing that occurred to me is that, like when I think about my professional experiences, I've come up in environments where there are non-creative environments, and people think, okay, well, advertising is inherently creative, and it is. The output is, but the media buying part that we do is Excel and numbers and data. And if you end up in the wrong environment that's super toxic, where people are like angling for your jugular because they want to look good in front of their boss, or they want a promotion, or they want something that, and you don't even realize that that's happening, you end up being afraid to say anything, let alone make a mistake, because the environment doesn't allow for that honest dialogue, that honest
Right.
work. But what I've found as I've been around creative people, it's often creative people who do have the tolerance to have the feedback because they understand that I think some of them do and some of them don't. But I guess the ones that do, they understand that like you have the opportunity to build and create, and creating something is a messy process.
Yeah.
And the best ones, the best creative people really will take the best from every person around them to build the best thing that they possibly can, and not get sucked into the me of it, but the creation of it.
You have to divorce yourself from your ego when it comes to being. Well, I think you need to do that no matter what to be successful, right? Um, it's not me, it's us, right? As an organization, um, and Brad and Albert, who like I mentioned, are the founders. Um, they could care less if their name and um, profile is elevated amongst anything. All they care about is doing the best work possible and building the best company possible. And I think that mentality is permeated across our organization because we do like, and I want to elevate my people. I want to put them on every, um, podcast and magazine art and everything I can, because they're all rock stars. But they also know too that like just because I'm on this show doesn't mean that they won't be on something next week, that Brad won't be doing something the week after, and that um, all we care about is doing our work to the best of our possible capacity as an organization writ large. And that it starts from the top. It just has to, right? That mentality, it has to start from your C-suite. It has to start from your leadership. The leaders have to be far less concerned about um, their popularity or their fame than they are about the work, right? Um,
So what
it just has to be.
so Alan, what's interesting, I'm looking at your LinkedIn profile. I see for from January 2019 to December 2020, you were the chief operating officer,
Yeah.
and now you're the chief creative officer. What I think is interesting is operations is such a different type of role than creative, and I'm very curious. Like, what is your role? There's so much importance to the work that you're doing, but and I use the word but like it's titled in a way that makes it sound very different than I think what you actually do. And I think the creativity is such an important role there. Tell us a little bit about like day to day. What are the types of things you're working on? Like, what do you do?
Well, so, so when the company started, it was just Brad and Albert. I was employee number 5, I think. They had a couple of folks that joined the company, one of whom is now the chief operating officer. So they started the company. It was just Brad and Albert. I came in with considerably more experience than anybody else in the organization, than hires 3 and 4. I just been working for a long time, and then we started to grow in a way that required some structure that we didn't have because we were a full-on startup, and then we were growing into a proper small business. And so during that transition, Albert became the CTO because his background is he's basically a technical wizard and can make anything out of anything. And then Brad, who is the CEO, became or was the founder and president. He became the CEO. We needed somebody to kind of put our hands around all that. And it looks like I'm alone here now. Wait, you're back.
I'm back. Is my video frozen? I do not know what's happening right
You
now.
are frozen, but I can
Yeah,
hear you
I
as long
don't
as I
know.
can.
I'm gonna
No problem.
disconnect my video, but so I'm gonna elevate
Okay.
you, and I'm gonna play around with the back end.
Okay, great. So I should just keep talking.
Yeah, keep going because when I put
Great.
you on the screen, it's just you.
Oh, great.
Yeah.
So, um, so I stepped into the chief operating role because we needed it. And we really needed somebody to kind of focus in on the human aspects of the work and kind of the structural aspects of moving to a new space, doing build out, getting an HR team underneath us, kind of getting our feet under us internally while Brad was looking externally and Albert was looking at our technical prowess. So I did that for about a year. Oh, I guess about 2 years. And then we promoted Tom Sullivan to the chief operating role, and he took over that work while I was able to step into this creative work. And so what I do now, as opposed to like the build out and the facilities and the operations of the organization, and I still kind of touch on that where appropriate because I have the lived experience of it. Now I am I oversee all of our communications, all of our marketing, all of our storytelling, basically writ large. So how we represent ourselves publicly, and then I do a lot of work on how we represent ourselves internally and how we talk to one another and how we represent the work to one another and do this kind of work about creative criticism internally. We're starting to get back to work in person again, which is very exciting. So we're going to be able to start doing some of our professional development work internally as well. So we're going to be doing like storytelling workshops and improvisation and bring some of these kind of creative ways of thinking and doing work into the organization. So I'll oversee that stuff as well. But it's very much that like storytelling arm of the work that has to be done.
So tell us a little bit about your marketing. What, like, I imagine referrals are the primary way that people find your business. Yes.
Yeah, they traditionally have been. It's one of those things where we didn't have the capacity or the overhead to invest in marketing in those first few years. And now that we're starting to develop the capacity to do that, we're building the proper department. We have a PR firm that's amazing, and I work with them almost every day. We have an internal marketing lead and social media lead, and then we're starting to get out onto more platforms and to elevate our stories kind of across different opportunities. So podcasts like this. We're featured in Inc. magazine this month. We were one of Fast Company's most innovative ideas of 2021. I think is the term. I should know that better than I am. But working with PR, working with PR and marketing to elevate those stories out into the public in a larger way, and then have a place for them to find us online when they get here. And then I also work with our team internally to basically work on how we represent ourselves here at the headquarters. So when people walk in the door, what do they see? How do they engage? How do they work with us through the process, right? So there's a lot of, it's a little biz dev, it's a little marketing, it's a little storytelling, it's a little crazy idea. So a lot of the other part of my work is, hey, should we open a drive-in movie theater? Why not? Let's explore that and how it could work.
Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, I mean, I was having dinner with my wife in June of last year, and we were talking about what we should do with our kids that weekend. It was right in the middle of, that big first few months of the pandemic, and we were chatting about taking them to one of these pop-up drive-ins that keep showing up every week, or I could just open one. So we did. I found a couple of just awesome folks, Lisa Shaw and Kelly Grant, who became our partners in it, and Tim Bailey, who was at the time our interim executive director for our nonprofit, and we, as this like cohort, came together around the idea of bringing a drive-in theater to Alexandria, Virginia, where we're headquartered. And it was kind of the perfect experience, the perfect time for people who needed to experience the love of movies again and gather in some even socially distanced way. And we made it as fully as a charitable experience. So date, and we're still operating. You can go to alexandriadrivein.com if you're on the East Coast. But we to date have made over 100, I think, between $50,000 and $1,000 that we've donated to a total of 6 charities, different in varying amounts, over the last year. So it was just a crazy idea that we had, to try something, and we have that tolerance for crazy here and those wild ideas that not every organization has the capacity for, the tolerance for, nor sometimes just the sheer capability to have the tolerance for, because you're so small, you're just trying to get your feet underneath you and try to get started. But once we did that, we were like, well, what's in the realm of the possible? And whenever somebody has a good idea, whether that's from one of our staff members, family, or friends, we'll pursue it until it doesn't make sense to anymore. And we don't care if we're in the industry of it or not.
That's nuts. Well, congratulations. You're doing some good. I mean, you're doing good stuff for the world in addition to like the professional work that you're doing.
Thanks.
Yeah, I mean, when you're looking at some of the trends that you're seeing with the private sector, is there anything that you can share with us about development, product development, iteration, any of the like sort of trends and learnings that you might see over the course of a number of clients that maybe you can talk about here?
Yeah, I mean, the work that we do when it comes to either doing prototype development or product dev is really focused on not just listening to what the client wants when they walk in the door and they think they not that they think they know what they want, because that's dismissive and I don't want to be that way, but
Right.
but listening to um, a client comes in and is like, I want to build a bowl, the bowl of the future, right?
Right.
And I mean paper bowl, not bowl.
I get it.
And so so I was telling that, I was using that reference earlier, and somebody was like, it's a whole new world with that industry. So I was like, all right. So company comes in and they say we want to develop a new bowl for the future, and we'll work with them and we'll give them an awesome prototype bowl. But what we really like to do is dive into the why of what they're trying to accomplish, right? Is it because you want to make a lot of money selling bowls really cheaply? So maybe we need to dive into the material science of it all. Maybe you want to make bowls that are going to be compostable, and they are no matter where you put it down, they're dissolved within a week and have done no environmental impact. Whatever the reason is, and maybe it's not because you want to do a bowl. Maybe it's actually that you're trying to do food equity, right? Maybe it's about serving an underserved community and solving food swamps or food deserts. Well, let's dive in on that and really get at the heart of what the goal of your product development is, so that we can really see if not only is it the right move to make the thing you think you need, but also, frankly, are we the right people to work with? And if we're not, we'll find the right people. And that's something that I think also sets us apart, because a lot of times we'll be like, look, we're not who you want for this. Like, we have friends who are in manufacturing, friends who are in design. Go to them and hear their names. Here's their reference. Like, tell them we sent you. We love those guys. Use them. Because what we don't want to do is just be a product house that churns out 1,000 of somebody's new snowball maker, right? We want to be the people who are like working with that designer before they even get to that stage, and we're like, why do you want to make new snowballs? What is it about your life that tells us that snowballs are the future?
Shave ice.
Shaved ice, right?
The amount of technology that goes into shave ice is kind of remarkable. I think
the shaved ice machine of the future.
Yeah, I think when my wife and I retire, we're gonna open up a shave ice place somewhere in Hawaii.
Oh, you just get a truck, man. Then you can see the whole islands. Just drive it all over.
That makes a lot of sense. So good. Alan, how can
you see? It's because you want to be. See, that's the whole thing. That's the conversation you have. It's not that you want to have a shaved ice place. It's that you want to go to Hawaii. So why do you want to be in Hawaii? Because you want to see Hawaii. So maybe the truck is the right answer.
We're kind of foodies, though. Like, we're definitely foodies. We like our sweets. We like the and we're off on a tangent now, but we love going to Hawaii, and every time we go there, it's like, all right, we're scouting out the different like ways that shave ice places are doing it. And
listen, man, if I could figure out how to make my comic book coffee shop happen, it would be it's the dream.
What's the comic? Tell us about the comic book coffee shop.
Secret Identity Coffee. You put a door, but it's two buildings adjacent to one another, and you put a door between it. So if you want to get your comic books, you go to the comic book store. If you want to get your coffee, you go to the comic book store or the coffee shop. But there's a pass through, and you can take your coffee to browse comics. You can get your comics and then go grab a cup of coffee. It's a dream.
Sounds like the type of place you'd see at like Universal, like with the City Walk or what,
Sure.
themed places.
I'll take Universal money to make this happen.
Of course, of course. Alan,
They have my number.
how can people find you if they want to reach out?
They can reach out to me directly at allen@buildmo.com, ALLEN at buildmo, BILDMO.com, or just go right to our website, buildmo.com, or search for us on Google, on social platforms. We're on Facebook and Instagram, and search for Building Momentum US. Or you can, if you're local to DC, you're always welcome to come by our shop. It's called The Garden in Alexandria. We are not the beer garden in Alexandria. We're The Garden. So
very cool. Alan
yeah,
Brooks, Chief Creative Officer, Building Momentum. Thanks for being with us today.
Robert, thanks so much for having me, man. I really enjoyed this.